All right, we're live. Welcome to my live stream. Exciting times. So I just finished up an episode of Artcasters with Scott Campbell, who's amazing, and I just would recommend you guys go to Scott Cirkland's channel, Circworks, and definitely check it out because it's just hilarious. It's like I can't explain how magical and amazing he is. I'm not going to do a really long intro today. I'm just going to dive right into making comics because it's about 12 midnight and I have to work till about 2 on Not Death But Love, the strange supernatural case of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And I made some pretty good progress on the flats for the last panel. I'm coloring this page, but it's like a crazy cityscape and it's just going to take a long time to flat the whole thing out. Yeah, I'll just say check out Jacob's Apartment, my graphic novel, as well as 2 stories. Both of them are out, available. They're books I'm really proud of, and maybe I'll talk a little more about them and show like trailers and stuff like that as we go. But yeah, I'm gonna just kind of burn through this and see if anyone shows up. If not, I totally get it too, because it is like midnight. But it was a good stream on Artcasters, and I recommend you guys check it out on Circworks channel. And now let's get into the comics. So right here, I'll be working on the comic. In times where, I had my branding off. And then on times where I'm like working on the like roughs and stuff like that from the script, I'll usually have the script down here. This is a book I'm working on for West Margin Publishing, and I have a lot of pages to knock out and get done. So that's what I'm hoping to do. And I'll talk a bit about some stuff that's come to mind. I had a really good conversation with my friend Corey too, Corey Kerr, who you guys should all be following. And it was in regards to like some of the sort of ills and problems of social media. Corey is a really incredibly intelligent guy, and I love that I'm friends with him because like aside from just being a really good guy, like he's the type of person you can like when Corey and I met in person, I wasn't worried that he was going to be like some strange, person. Like I knew he was like a good dad and like a good family person and he's somebody I don't mind around my kid. Um, so that's awesome. And Scott's the same way. Jim Luhan's the same way. Like these are just good, wholesome people. But one of the things I really appreciate about him is also he just has this gift to like articulating complicated ideas in like digestible ways. And he's very like non-pretentious in his like approach, even though he's extremely intelligent. And so I really love getting in conversations with him, and particularly on areas of like social media and communications, which he is far more versed and he's a lot smarter than I am on those topics. But anyhow, he just posted he might not have posted it yet, but I would make sure you're following him on his website on YouTube. But like I like the fact that he has a way of kind of anyhow, he's just got some really intelligent things to say regarding like social media and technology and stuff like that. And I know I'll meme about it sometimes, but in reality, it's like really important stuff that he's constantly thinking about and talking about. And anyhow, so like on Artcasters, he showed a preview of this comic that he started. Actually, he was working on it on the last time he kind of showed up on my stream, and it is just looking incredible. Like it just looks like something that I think will take off. Like it's got like a classic kind of feel to it. It's humorous, but it has like a real like it's like humor with an edge to it, and not like edge lord humor, but like humor that has like kind of a moral or a point or like a argument made with it. I honestly was just really impressed by it, and I think it's really cool stuff. But it also brought up some because he was saying some things about social media that I'm really curious, and hopefully we will get into it for like an Artcasters episode because I think he might be onto something. He was talking about kind of like the problem with social media, and I'm going to touch on it as best I can. I don't want to poach his topic because he'll obviously, Corey will articulate this better, but it did make me start. And we had like a little conversation after Artcasters regarding just the state of like human consumption, and it really it's like some stuff that I don't always talk about on stream, but I think it's digestible content that's interesting. And I always, like, anytime I'm going to have this kind of conversation or even delve into this topic, like, first off, I want to preface that this is an art stream. So these are just kind of like stream of consciousness thoughts. So sometimes I'll like play with an idea that I'm not fully fleshed out on. Like, I'm kind of working through it logically, as logically as I can, as being a very illogical being, right? The other thing I always want to preface this with is like, I'm going to say a few opinions that like are in regards to art, and these opinions don't have to be your opinions. So I want to be really clear about that too, because I do feel like, at least if this goes where I think I might end up heading, conversation wise, I'm going to be talking about some of the darker demons that I think about, like when it comes to comics, when it comes to the general public and their kind of taste in like what they want, like the consumer. And some of it might sound kind of negative, and I want to say like these are thoughts I don't always have. And also they're not like, again, it's not I'm not referring to any individual person out there. If you make art that would like qualify under some of the things I'm going to be talking about, just understand, one can talk about a concept and an idea without being like about you, right? So I wanted to clarify that, because like I don't want this to seem like it's some sort of passive aggressive conversation referring to anyone I know or anyone in our community, because it's not going to be. But it's an interesting topic, and I have to fill some talking time while I do art. And that's the whole theme of this stream, is to just kind of do like stream of consciousness thoughts as I'm working on art, and hopefully like keep you guys company when you're working on art as well. And I don't know, it was exciting enough and it's fresh enough on my like from our conversation, because we were literally talking like a minute before I started streaming. So I figure it's worth talking about. Okay, did I qualify that enough? It's like 8 minutes in. And we are coloring, by the way, the last panel on page 24 of Not Death But Love, The Strange Supernatural Case of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And some of that panel is getting cut off. I wonder if I need to resize. I had to, sometimes when I'm doing, yeah, so let's see if we can get that a little more centered for you guys. Sometimes when I'm doing the Artcasters, I have to kind of mess with my OBS settings, just to kind of like make sure I'm not like covering things up. So there we go. Now you guys can kind of see the area I'm working on. So it's this last panel. It's this crazy. This is going to take forever. So I'm definitely going to be streaming till like 2 in the morning. But it's coming out good. And also I'm going to do a little bit of cheating, because like on this page, it's like I technically have made the rule that I cannot show shading and lighting, but I'm going to use flat color to kind of get around that a little bit on a landscape like this. And also I do have the rule that I'm allowed to color hold water, fire, or sky. Like sky can be color held too. So you'll notice that like on this, there's not going to be a lot of rendering, but I can use white. And then in this case, like I am doing a little bit of cheat rendering by doing just areas of flat color that change their depth, but it still kind of follows the rules of like that I set out. So for the book, so hopefully it aesthetically fits. Okay, so let's get back to the topic. So it's not even really going to be that long of one. I have to say there are times where it's frustrating being a creator who is not making comics that are like fast food. and I'm not saying that there's not a place for like fast food. And I actually, when I was younger, I was like really into fast food comics. I talked about this a little bit on the stream yesterday too. Philip said, "Hey Josh, late night tonight, eh?" Yep. So we did Artcasters over on Scott Circlin's channel, and then I still have to finish the flats on this page, and I've got till 2 to kind of work on it. So I figured, you know what, I'll throw on a stream um, while I'm working and hang out with the community. How's it going, Philip? It's got to be, or is it early? I'm trying to remember our time difference now. Is it early for you or super late? I know we have like a significant time difference, but I'd be kind of curious to hear that. So yeah, I was gonna say like, and I prefaced this to just be like, hey, this, just so you guys know, what I'm talking about is not like a personal thing against any specific artist. This is just my thoughts of my darker thoughts that will come up sometimes when I'm working on the type of art that I work on. So I wouldn't call what I make like I think there's a place for like fast food like in the world. Like there's it's delicious quite a lot of the time. It's not necessarily the most healthy thing, but it's like it's fun, it's quick, it's low effort, and it's like, and you're gonna kind of get like a quick fill from it. It's not gonna give you a lot of nutrition or nutrients. You're just gonna kind of digest it and have that moment of like aha, like my hunger is appeased, on to the next thing. A lot of what I see in comics is that, and again, this isn't referencing anyone I know or anything like that. And again, this is about how I feel, not how, like, it's not necessarily even the reality of it. And this is an idea I'm still kind of working out, but I was trying to kind of pin down like why I get frustrated sometimes. And I was talking to Corey, and he was talking about social media, and I just instantly related it to comics. And I kind of want to leave some of the social media part of it to Corey because I think he wants to talk about. Well, we want him to talk about it on a future Artcast, and I think it would just be a great topic to bring up. But I'll summarize like his primary complaint as best I can, and then if we have that topic, he can correct me if I got it wrong. Um, oh, Sticky Art's here. How's it going, buddy? And then Philip's here as well, saying it's later and 3 a.m. So, or 3 hours ahead. Wait, so it's later here. So you're 3 hours ahead. Okay, so it's. Oh my gosh, I can't figure out if that's earlier or later. I guess since it just hit midnight, it's earlier. How's it going, Sticky? Um, yeah. So anyhow, I guess what I'm getting at is like sometimes it can be frustrating when you're making art, and I think this goes for most artists. I've met a lot of artists who make what I think they would consider like fast food as art. And I kind of described fast food, but and some of them, that's like their intention. Like they want to make something that's fun, that's easily digestible, that, maybe it's not like full of the biggest nutrition or whatever, but it's like, it's going to get the job done. It's going to make people, feed their appetite. And like, even if they move on to the next thing, they'll have like a good association with it. Right. And hopefully a good experience, and it'll be a quick, like low effort moment where they're going to get their art fix. Right. Oh, Philip said, I'm up because we discovered a few days ago we have bed bugs. Oh my gosh. The landlord had to call in investigators in about 5 hours, and we had to tear apart the apartment in my office. Oh my gosh. That sounds like a nightmare. From what I've heard of bed bugs, like that just sounds like a disaster. Because you have to like kind of destroy a lot of stuff, right? Like to get rid of them. And yeah, that's brutal, man. I'm sorry to hear that, Philip. It feels like you've been having a rough week and are not getting much of a break. So hopefully this topic won't get too dark. I can talk about brighter things too if that helps. You let me know, Philip. But yeah, you said nightmare is an understatement. My whole life came to a halt. Yeah, because like I mean, what do you do without your office? Yeah, That's brutal. Oh, Adam's here. Cool. So yeah, so like I was saying, like people tend to so I'm kind of explaining something that I thought of after a quick conversation with Corey Kerr. That's what I'm kind of recapping here. And I've prefaced it with like, I'm not going to be talking about any specific artists I know or anything like that. This is just me talking off the cuff. And it actually continues from a bit of our conversation, Adam, too, yesterday. So I think it might be of interest. But anyhow, I kind of want to get it off my chest and talk about it because I think it's a worthwhile topic. Although I, again, feel kind of bad because, Philip, I want to brighten your day and I don't want to go like too complainy and dark when, obviously I feel pretty fortunate to not have had the bed bug thing. That's brutal. That just sucks. He said, I was in the middle of getting an apartment ready for heat treatment and I should get back at it. I'm just taking a break, but hope you have a productive stream. Thank you, Philip. So, well, thanks for stopping by, man. And I hope that gets taken care of. Keep us in the loop, man. And I hope it doesn't derail your ambitions and stuff. Know that like stuff like that is always it's just never easy and it's not your fault. And I don't know, dude. From what I know of you, I'm sure you're gonna get back on the horse and rock art when you're able. But like, don't beat yourself up about time you can't. You know, you know what I mean. Like you can't like magically like fix that time or whatever that's lost. So hang in there, Philip. Yeah, and sorry to hear that, man. That just sucks. Okay, so the thought that I have is like a lot of art creators are interested and content to make like fast food, like quick, easy, digestible, fun art. It's just fun. It's quick entertainment, and like unlike fast food, I guess to an extent, this kind of art can serve a purpose, right? Because life is heavy. Like a good example is like I mean, hell, like Philip just had um like this whole situation that like derailed his work process and stuff like immediately, and it's like stuff like that's going on all the time, and sometimes people need fast food or something that's like, and I don't mean actual fast food, I just mean quick fun art that's going to give them like a break from like the heavy just insanity that is life sometimes, right? So I can see a purpose in it, but and I think like there are times like for sure, like hell, when I'm done with this comic, I'm probably gonna spend like a week just watching like Stranger Things or something. So I'm not saying I'm like above it, but I'm just saying like it is kind of tough when you're like trying to write stuff that's different. When honestly, like it, and this is how it kind of relates to Corey was talking about, like how the algorithm, it's like this weird self-fulfilling prophecy that people make for themselves in social media, where like people are like, as human beings, we're drawn to like click to like the most shocking, like drama filled, like, or just a quick, easily digestible thing, right? Like it's like, oh, okay, this is like a girl on roller skates or somebody singing a funny song, or it's a funny little like America's Funniest Home Videos thing. It's not unique to social media too. It was like a huge thing on like cable TV back in the day too, where you had like these very produced television shows that some of them were really profound and thought out, and then eventually they just got buried by like reality TV, right? um and again, like nothing against reality TV, that can be fun. It's just like for the creators that are investing a ton of time and trying to do something a little different, or maybe even something that's not fast food, like maybe it's like really healthy food, but it's like when people get so used to digesting fast food all the time, they almost forget. And keep in mind, this is not a thought I have all the time. This is just what I think at like my darker moments when I'm creating comics, and I'm trying to be really transparent on these streams. So hopefully, again, you guys don't think I'm like wandering around all depressed about this all the time. This is just at my darker moments. So when you're trying to do something that's a little different, um, than the norm. It's weird because I feel sometimes as a comic creator, and maybe you guys can relate with this, but sometimes I'll feel like I'm a purveyor of food and I'm driving past the same restaurant with like different branding, but they're all selling the same cheeseburger, the same hamburger, and it starts feeling like a suburb where you're just walking and all the houses are like exactly the same, like they're that song Tiny Boxes, it's like that, like where it's just you're looking at all these tiny boxes on the hillside and they all look exactly the same, right? That's the whole point of that song. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to live in a house in a suburb. It's nice, it's quiet, it's safe. It's like I live in a suburb, it's like it's not a bad way to live. It's a healthy place for a kid to live and stuff like that. But when you're a person who wants to kind of build a different kind of house and then you put it on the market and people just want the boxed house, that's kind of how I feel sometimes with making comics, where I could probably like my t-shirt Attack of Literacy is a funny t-shirt, but it's a funny t-shirt, and it's like it's a t-shirt that aims to like literary people, or cliche League of Evil cliche. Oh my gosh, it's been so long since I made that design. The League of Cliche Evil Super Villains. Funny design. It's like basically just making a bunch of cliche supervillains that are in all these different things. Very quickly digestible. It's fast food, right? It's fun fast food. I'm proud of that fast food that I made. And that those things, when I made those things, when I've done those things, they went viral. Like they brought me income. They had rewards. There was just like a plethora of people, like intelligent people, like people all over the place that just really loved these things, like people on TV shows, like the IT crowd, like the whole second season had it as a poster on the set. Fast food. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's fast food, and I don't mind calling it that because the only person that would be insulting is myself. Like I made fast food for a long time in art and I loved it. There's a part of me that like loves like nostalgia and kitsch and like I mean like I'm in love with that stuff. I'm a consumer of some of that stuff. So I'm not saying I'm away from this judgment, right? But I'm just saying when you do a book like Two Stories or Jacob's Apartment, these are books where I like poured my soul into these books, as corny as that is. Like, and I talk to artists who want to do this with their art. They want to pour their soul into what they're doing. And a lot of them are freaked out at like the monetary prospects of trying to sell that. I'm talking to an author right now who's like sold like millions of books. He's like a really famous author. I don't want to name drop him or anything because like I don't even know if this is going to go anywhere. It might just be a friendship. It might just be an LA thing where we're just talking for like, a week and then, it's like, oh, cool, we got our contacts. Yeah, we'll do something. Yeah, we'll do something. I don't know. But it was a fascinating conversation because he had two scripts. One script was the one that he's pitching to Hollywood and he thinks is going to get picked up and that it's going to get picked up and it'll probably get a pretty good big book deal and probably a big publisher. And then the other is the script he liked. And they're the same story. So he has a version like 6 and it's a script he liked. Or he kind of liked, but it was like he took out all the meaning and just made it like a big punchy action adventure. And he thinks that's what's going to sell. And then he has a second script that's a revision of that where he poured his soul into it. And he thinks that there's no way in hell any publisher is going to pick it up. That is frustrating as hell to me because I like books and stories where people pour their souls into them. Not all the time. Like sometimes I can't afford it, right? It's just like fast food. It's like there's times where I just can't afford it. There's times where hell, I just need to see like a superhero like punch people, or I need to see like an action scene. But there is a real frustration that I feel personally about just people's the thing is, it's a hard sell to get people into a literary work. Like, I know it's weird, but it's like it's an easy sell if I just say like, hey, this book is like this action romp thing, because everybody wants fast food. Like everybody's conditioned for fast food. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, I make such brilliant work, you guys should buy it, and I'm so mad. It's like, no. I don't even know if I'm the guy who buys that stuff all the time. I'm just saying there's something wrong. It it feels like the social media thing, where social media rewards very quick content that's very low risk, um or it's like very saucy and like spicy and like drama filled. Like that is generally going to be most social media. It's going to be like a political meme, or it's going to be like a funny, like a really beautifully drawn but funny comic strip. But rarely is it going to be like some, I mean, the format of social media is like one and done. It is literally like the fast food line, um where you're like kind of in line, you're waiting for your food. um mm, I love this. Sticky Art said, I definitely know what you mean. My original character, um drawn well, will perform way worse than a quick drawing of a well-known character. Exactly. And then Sticky Art here is saying it takes a lot to create a new wave in society. Yes. So here's the thing. I got to a point as a creator where, like, I mean, for my day job, I make fast food, and I like the fast food I make. It's fun. I don't actually make literal fast food, but I make like fast food art. It's like souvenirs, stuff like that. These are things that, again, like, it can be imbued with a lot of meaning and be very special to people, right? Like, I still have souvenirs from when I was a kid that I feel like when I hold them, they bring a memory of a place that, like, you couldn't give me with like the highest form of art, and it's like it's a tchotchke, you know. So I'm not saying these things don't have meaning. I'm just saying, like, I do that, I can do that, I can do that and get paid to do that. But there's a part of me that wants to do more and wants to believe that there are people out there who want more. But it's weird because you go to like a comic convention for like indie comics, right? And you're like, this must be the place. This must be the place that wants the imbued quality stuff. And even at those places, the quick sells are always like, this is a story that has these like fantastical characters. Like, it's never going to be an easy sell to just be like, hey, this is a story that's about life. Like, a slice of life story is a hard sell. I'm not saying it's all just slice of life, but I'm saying, like, even there, like, let's say you're doing a fantastical character and stuff like that. It's like, I'll see people at a book, at a convention that's supposed to be about indie comics, and they go to a booth and they buy a print of a character that they already like that was made by a different creator. And it makes sense because it's like they're already attached. And here's the thing about the fast food thing. I'm trying to kind of connect this all. And also just be honest about this like darker area of my thoughts or whatever. But the problem with the fast food thing, and it feels like this is the same thing with like social media, right? Is like people are just kind of digesting, like, it's feeding them the thing they want. And then they get so hooked on the thing they want, the fast fix, that like when you offer food that's like a little healthy, or it's something that, might digest different, but it's going to be a good meal. I don't think people know how to, like, I feel like we've conditioned ourselves. I've conditioned myself. Like, I think most of us have conditioned ourselves. I think even a lot of indie cartoonists have conditioned themselves to where, like, we just want the same thing on repeat, like the same exact thing. Like, I want this to be, I think I was talking to Adam yesterday and talking about that too, where it's like, I want the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but instead of turtles, they're lizards. I want, Goonies. I shouldn't say Goonies because, like, Scott Kirkland has a comic that's influenced by Goonies and it's brilliant, and you guys should all own it. And it wouldn't apply to this because he did pour a lot of soul and heart into that book. But like, you know, somebody saying like, I want this to be like this movie, but it's different in this way. Like it, but it can't be too different. That's what I'm getting at. It's like that's the problem with the diet we're all on. I think it's like if it's too different, then it's scary and it's not, and it might take a while to eat, and we're all in a rush for the next fast food. And so it's like, it creates this culture of like, I can do this quick thing, but I can't sit down and digest something. I can do this quick thing, but it has to be something I already know what I like. Like, I already know what I like. It has to be the same thing on the menu. And if it's different, it's like the difference between a hamburger and a cheeseburger, but I want a burger, right? Like, it's that kind of mentality. So if you give like somebody with that mentality, like a steak, they just don't know what to do with it. Or like a vegan dish, they don't know what to do with it. Like, because they're like, I just eat burgers. That's all I do. I just eat burgers. Like, and it's like, well, why do you just eat burgers? Because that's what I eat. And it's like this weird cycle I feel like a lot of people are stuck in as consumers. And then it affects the creators, because then the creators start dishing out stuff where they're like, oh, you like Wolverine? I did this thing where I like poured my soul into it. I put it out there. It sold like nothing. I can't make a living on it. And so then they give up and they move on to the thing where they're like, hey, you like Wolverine? Cool. Here's Wolverine, different costume, slightly different. Like, we'll just twist the biography a little bit. I'll draw it exactly the same. Oh, okay. You like this artist? Okay, cool. I'm going to draw exactly like this artist. And then I'll have this little tweak where like maybe I draw like nose a little different or something. Oh, you like this? Okay, I'm going to do exactly like, we become like photocopy machines for pop culture that people already like. And then people get upset because they're like, man, it's so crazy because I go to see movies and it's all the same thing. It's because we're buying the same thing. Like, we're literally buying, like, look at cars on the road these days. And it's like, there's a reason for like the fact that cars are starting to become more and more exactly the same, because like there's a specific style of car that's much more safe, right? Like, it's just like there's a more aerodynamic design to a car. So they all start kind of moving towards this one car shape. But it just becomes this boring road where everyone's driving the same exact car. It's like the boring suburb where, yeah, these are official like buildings and stuff like that, but it's like the same buildings. And then it's stunning, and it's like we don't even know what to do with ourselves half the time when we're like in a downtown area of like a city that has a lot of history to it, and there's just architecture of all kinds there, and there's people of all kinds there, and there's like variety and difference. And it's like, so anyhow, yeah, CB Smallwood said cars today look very generic. They look like shoes with wheels. Yeah. And then Adam said, I don't think you're saying anything negative. Thank you, Adam. And then Sticky Art said, I like pizza and cheeseburgers. I am 100% about pizza and cheeseburgers. I'm not trashing. I even started this off by saying like, hey, look, I'm a guy who like, I buy the fast food art. Like, I need it sometimes. Like, there's times where like life gets so heavy that there's no purpose in like kind of like, I don't necessarily want to like relive somebody else's trauma like every time I turn on the television, because we're all dealing with our own traumas, right? Like, yeah, I preface this with that. There's times where like a light meal is good, it's healthy. It's like sometimes I think it would be weird if like everybody was doing the same thing in reverse, where like all they're doing is like reading this like deep poetic work that's just like heavy philosophy and stuff. Like, you'll lose your mind if that's all you consume. So, but the problem, I guess, is that I don't think people acknowledge the problem. I don't think creators are bold enough at like kind of fighting against that. Um, like, we don't have to just keep making the same thing. And it takes a risk to make a different thing, but make a different thing. Like, but I have to say, in the thick of trying to make a different thing, and maybe some of this is just that maybe my different thing is just not that great or whatever. Um, but I feel like, looking aesthetically at the books that I've made and like the effort that I've made, and hearing from reviewers and from people who've stopped by and checked it out, when people do look at this stuff, they do think it's good. And I don't think they're just saying that to like kind of appease me, because these books have had like emotional impacts on people. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I've literally had like emails that said that like my book, like two stories in particular, Jacobs has been out for a very short amount of time, and like I have no idea how it's selling. So but I haven't gotten like fan emails or anything about it yet. But with two stories, I did get like a couple emails about by people who like it literally helped them not kill themselves, and like so I read that and I'm like, okay, I'm making work that has an impact and I think that is important. And I don't think I'm delusional about it. Like I could be. You can never rule out delusion, especially as an artist. Like it's hard to rule out delusion. But I feel like I've made some at least I've made a really steady effort to make really good work. And what's frustrating, and I know other creators like this. I mean, Sticky Art was talking about how he'll draw a different person's character really badly and the video goes viral, and he draws his own character and it's like way less views. Um that feels terrible. Like, here's the weird thing. I love the puppet checkup design I did. It's like a stupid t-shirt design. I love it. It's a dumb joke, and I love dumb jokes. I make dumb jokes on the stream all the time, where it's an X-ray of Kermit the Frog, and that went all over the internet. It was like huge. I got emails. If I still sold that, like here's the thing: if I brought that at conventions, that's all people would buy. They would buy that print. They would just buy it in mass. I'd have lines of people at my booth who want to buy this print of like that took me 30 minutes. That's of a different person's character, and it's a joke. So, but I've spent 5 years on a graphic novel that like that won't happen. Like that audience will not be there for that graphic novel, at least right now. And that juxtaposition, like dealing with that polarity of like psychologically dealing with that is heavy to deal with for a creator sometimes. Like I'm just being straight and honest about it. It's like it's weird to me when I look at stuff I myself have created, and I'm not trying to brag about it because I've been lucky that any of that stuff took off. But I've made stuff that like was everywhere and popular, and like shirts that sold hundreds of thousands of shirts. And like shirts like to the point where I would go to like the mall and like 4 people would be wearing a shirt I designed. It's weird. I've had that happen, and then to go from that to like something I spent 5 years on that I know is deeper and it's better food. It's just better food. It's not necessarily going to be like better in the short term, but this is food you're going to sit with. It's food that'll last. It's like it's important food. And it's like I just am like all I can sell are like freaking hot dogs. You know, I'm like, okay, you just keep wanting the hot dogs. It drives creators out of it. I'm not saying that is going to be a debilitating thing for me because I'm kind of used to that. I kind of knew that going in. Even when I took on doing 2 stories, it's like I'm going to write a confessional memoir as like somebody who like again, like why would somebody buy a memoir of some random person? That's a hard sell. And then it's going to talk about mental illness. Okay, really hard sell because like it's a very stigmatized issue that people don't like talking about, or when they talk about it, they like to fluff the talk of it, where it's all about solutions and it's never descriptive. It's always prescriptive, right? Um, and I wanted to write a book that was both. That was like not even prescriptive. It's more like descriptive and kind of saying, yeah, and that's kind of what it's like, and you're not alone. Like, which I think is a very important thing to let people know when they're in the thick of things like that. Or Jacob's Apartment, where I'm like, I'm going to do a story about a person's father like dying of cancer. That's a hard sell. Like, who wants to just casually, especially somebody who lost someone of cancer, maybe they don't want to relive that trauma. So I knew this going into these books. I think, this book about the Brownings, I think has more possibility of being commercially viable. And I think it's exciting because it's new work, but it kind of bypasses that because there's people out there who already like the Brownings. And to be honest, that's why it has more of a chance of doing better than my other books, because people want what they already like. That's the thing that's frustrating. It's really annoying. And I see it in myself too. I like things I already like. And the older I get, the more it's like becomes that more and more. But what's weird is if we as creators stop making the things that we feel like are our calling to make, and we just start appeasing the crowd by making like fluff and fast food, that's all we're going to get. And that's all they're going to want, because they just want the same thing recycled over and over again. I'm sorry for getting dark, but that's when I'm at my darkest as an artist, that's what it's like. And promoting an indie book that is not pulling on tropes that already exist or properties that already exist, or it's not like, I even tried to come up with like a log line that compares it to movies that exist, because I know that people just psychologically need that. They need that to check out something new. But it's really frustrating because it's like, it wouldn't be this hard of it. Like I've talked about this, but I'll have a hard time selling that kind of thing to a close friend of mine that I've known for 20 years. Whereas if I do like a stupid t-shirt, they'll buy it tomorrow. They'll wear it every day. They'll share it all over the place. It's a weird thing. And particularly if that stupid t-shirt has like a character that they already like on it. And I know it. I see it in myself. Like, I love Doctor Who. If something has like a Dalek on it, I'm gonna be more likely to look at it. I don't but I guess what I'm saying is, like, if all people are doing is like Dalek fan art, like, as awesome as Daleks are, like what kind of media landscape are we going to be in? It becomes just like social media, where like if everybody's just watching like, accident videos and like girls roller skating on TikTok, guess what TikTok's going to feed you? That same thing. So you're going to have these 20-second, like, very shallow, like, we're draining the depths of the water, and then we're frustrated because we can't sail in the ocean, but we've literally drained it of all content. That's what I'm getting at. And it's frustrating, and I'm trying to fight it, and I'm in the fight, but there are times where when you're making it, it is so tempting to just take the money. It's super tempting. And to an extent I do, for like my job, and that's okay. I don't feel like that's wrong or unethical, but it's like, it is so tempting, because it's like I've done it, and it's fun, and it still is my stuff. It's like, to an extent I get to express myself, but I just think it's sad that like all these artists out there are having to like dumb their stuff down, and then half of them have to like die for their work to have any relevance. It's just like the whole history of art is like that, and it's insane. It's insane. Like Harvey Pekar had to like become a meme on like the Letterman show for people to like care about American Splendor. Like, nobody wanted American Splendor. They bought it because they were like, who's this crazy guy on like a late night TV show? And then even then, he still had trouble selling issues of American Splendor because it wasn't Spider-Man. And also most people buying it were just buying it as like a meme, because it's like, oh, it's that funny angry guy from TV, which is like, it's insane to think about when you read something like American Splendor. Like, I'm just saying, like, we can do better. We can do better. I can't help but think we can do better. Yeah, and Adam's got a point. Like, if you hadn't compared your book to Eternal Sunshine, and Ghost World, I wouldn't have been nearly as interested. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, we talked about that last night. It's like comparing to a band. Like, if you're like, hey, you got to check out this band, and I'm like, what do they sound like? And you're like, they're unique. Doesn't tell me anything. Like, why am I going to check out that band? But if you're like, hey, you really like the Violent Femmes, like, it's kind of like if you mix the Violent Femmes with like, with Sebadoh or something, and it's like, oh, okay, I can kind of, now I have like a point where I can go, ooh, I like those two things. I trust this person who's telling me this. So, like, that is human nature. It makes sense. Like, because it's kind of like language. I mean, people can make the argument that language is BS and arbitrary, and like, language is just really just an utterance of sound. But like, language and words and like common meaning of words and like agreeing on words we're going to speak in is like really important for like people to function, right? So so my point is, like, I'm not saying like like we need to change the language entirely. I'm just saying, like, if all the artists are doing is feeding the audience exactly what they want, and then we end up in the scenario where we're going to have Spider-Man 5000, we're going to have Superman reboot 5000, we're going to have Stranger Things, which was kind of unique, and then that's going to branch off to like the 50th Stranger Things thing, and we're going to have Star Wars franchises and stuff like that. But we're not going to have like the cool indie film. Like that's going to be less and less. We're not going to have the cool indie band because everybody's going to go with the mega bands. Like it's yeah. Anyhow, that's my darkest thoughts on the subject. But yeah, we can do better. I can do better. I need to like make more of an effort to like, when the next time I'm boothing at a convention, what I need to do is look for like the booth that has the most interesting thing, and to clear my bias and just be like, does that sound like that's going to be a good story? And maybe try buying something that's heavy. Like not something that's like light and fluff, where it's like, oh, this is a story about an elf who like dances around the world and is all happy, and it's happy elf jokes. No, like I want, and I'm not saying that's bad. It's not bad to have happy elf jokes. Happy elf jokes could be cool. Or this is a story about like a superhero and stuff like that. And yeah, superhero stories can be deep and cool. I've read Watchmen. Everybody has, right? It's brilliant. It's one of the best comics ever made. I'm not going to criticize superhero comics. I'm just saying that like maybe I should look for the thing that's going to have soul in it. Like even if it's one of those genres, like let's go back to the elf thing, right? Maybe it's Lord of the Rings and you're just passing it by because it's like it's not the thing. It's not I'm forgetting who was doing, there was a poet before Tolkien that was doing science fiction. And you're like, I like that poet. That's what I like. I like that poet. This is a novel. I only like my fantasy and poetry. I've never heard of fantasy and poetry. Like no, but like make a risk, buy the new thing. That's all I'm saying. It's just it's and as creators, stop just catering. Like yeah, sure, cater for a living. We have to eat, right? So I would say like Sticky was talking about like yeah, Sticky said, "No, I support small artists." Yeah, 100% do, and I appreciate that. But like Sticky was talking about like his streams, where he's like he'll draw his own character and then he draws another person's character, boom, like that's the big stream. Don't stop drawing the big person's character, of course. Like that's not my argument, because like you got to eat, dude. Like, and that's fun. It's fun. You're getting paid to draw. That's cool. That's like your day job. But don't forget the passion stuff. Don't forget to sneak in those streams that like nobody cares about, but they're awesome. That's my point. Like as creators, that's what I think we need to be doing. We can't forget that like passion thing, because then the food all becomes the same, and then the audience gets used to that same boring, bland food, and then it gets harder and harder and harder to like push something new to an audience that just wants to turn the entire art world into a bookstore that has the same exact book like over and over and over and over, and then eventually maybe just get rid of the bookstore altogether, and it's just going to be a suburb of like the same color house, it's the same box, it's just repeated, it's the same car. Let's just do a little different because we're creatives. That's all I'm saying. CB Smallwood said, I think artists need to do two things: make art that pays the bills and make art that comes from the heart. Nickelback is known for panty droppers, but their albums have heavy songs. I just think we gotta just be honest with ourselves, and like, yeah, like but I have to say, man, like the audience makes it hard. Like, and I don't mean my audience. Like I'm lucky to have like people who support me and stuff like that. But the audience makes it hard. It is hard to be at a convention and have somebody like walk past something you did like for 5 years and see them go, "Oh, the Punisher. I love the Punisher." And you're like, "What the like why are you at an indie comic convention? Why not just go like, I don't know." And I'm not saying it's wrong to like the Punisher, because again, as a kid, I loved the Punisher. But you get what I'm saying? Like, there's just something a little further. There's just we could be doing more. Yeah, I like that. Sticky was saying I post original stuff, then mix in reviews and fan art, so it's a little crossover. Yeah, and I also don't want to be into like one of my pet peeves is people who aren't realists on some issues, right? Like there are things about life that suck and you can kind of complain about them and stuff like that, and it doesn't really do a lot of good a lot of the time. um and so I'm definitely not trying to be that guy who's just like, oh, complaint, why isn't this better? I kind of get why it's that way. I even can see it in my own psychology why it's that way. So I don't even know if this is like a rant that has a solution. I think this is just me kind of speaking my mind of like one of the things that like the darker things about trying to promote like an independent book. It's like, you know, it I don't know if there's a solution. I think like that the only solution is that we continue to make good art, try to make the best thing you can, and then encourage others to like go outside of their comfort zone with like what they like and what they consume, and then make a conscious effort on our own to like consume indie content and stuff like that, which is really hard because like even that is easier said than done. Like I want to buy more indie books, but like, I mean, heck, I have 2 books by Paul Pate and I really like them. I've really enjoyed them. He's like a friend of the show, and I've only made my way through like half the book because when am I going to read books? Like I work, I get home, and I draw. Like I don't have time, and I know that like I'm not saying that as a complaint. I'm saying like that's probably not you. Like that's not a unique situation. Like most artists, for the individuals, that was for you, Adam. But most artists, you know, are kind of struggling with that where it's like we're first off like most artists are not on like high incomes, so it's like dude, buying a book is a big a big expense. Most of us are like, you know, time crunched because we're always working on our own creative projects, so when are we going to consume our own projects? That's I think one of the reasons a lot of us like really like streaming, because it's like something we can do and get art done, or consume and get art done, and it doesn't like impede the progress of our own work. I totally get that. So I'm not trying to say this is like a non-realist who's like, how come people have to work for a living? It's like that sucks, but like, you know, if you sit back and like don't work, you're gonna have a rough time and not have a lot of money. And like, yeah, it'd be cool to like have a different system, but like you can't ignore the system we're in. You know what I mean? Like it's like one of the things I really related to Holden Caulfield as a kid, you know, and I think a lot of people do when they're like teenagers and they read like Catcher in the Rye, which I still think is like an amazing book. But it's like you read that, and half the fun of it is like as a kid, you're growing, you know, up and like seeing all this like BS in the world. And it's like when you first read, I don't know. For me, it was really profound, and this isn't unique. Like that's one of the reasons people loved Catcher in the Rye. But it's like you read like Holden just call it out for what it is. He's like, man, everybody's a phony, right? Like this whole thing's fake. Like, you know what I mean? And he's kind of like obviously a depressive and like has issues, but like the reason that Catcher in the Rye was such a hit is it like rings true for so many people, especially at an age where you're starting to realize like, you know, when you're young, you like idolize adults and they have all the solutions and stuff like that. But about the age that I think kids should read Catcher in the Rye is that like disillusioned age where you're like, oh man, like people actually don't have this all figured out. People are imperfect. Like people have problems. Like this whole thing's kind of a little more rigged than I like. Um, it, so anyhow, where was I going with this? Oh yeah. So I'm not trying to be Holden Caulfield here, because I like as an adult, I have trouble with it because I'll read Catcher in the Rye, and much like when I was little, I'll be like, yeah, Holden has a point here as a character. And by the way, I don't want to be pretentious here, so like feel free to let me know if you guys haven't read Catcher in the Rye. I'll run down what the plot is as best I can remember, because I don't want to like be talking about something like assuming everybody knows it, but I also don't want to be pretentious and be like, you guys wouldn't have read this book. But anyhow, if you need me to like kind of recap it, don't feel shy about just being like, what is that book about? But because not everybody's read it, you know. And like honestly, dude, I haven't read the whole of Moby Dick, you know, which is like a Melville and it's a classic, and so I'll admit that. Okay, Adam said I haven't read Catcher. Okay, So I'll just, for the sake of like anybody out there, and Adam, thanks for speaking up, because there's probably like 4 people, or at least, probably more, who like would watch the stream after the fact and want to ask, but like may not like want to be embarrassed or like ask something that like, so honestly, dude, power to you for saying that, because that'll help those people. Yeah, and Adam said it's not pretentious to expect most people to be familiar with the classic. Yeah, but still, I'll recap it. So basically, it's not a really crazy complicated plot. It's like Holden Caulfield is going to like a New York private school. He has a really close relationship with his mother, who's a little controlling, and a very distant, kind of hostile relationship with his father. And he is disillusioned. He just gradually becomes disillusioned with school, with performance, with adults, and eventually wanders around New York and kind of has a nervous breakdown and experiences a lot of interesting things, and just kind of rants about how fake everything is. um, and like, there's a ton of movies, like Garden State is kind of like a bit of a like Catcher in the Rye-ish influenced story. There's a lot of like movies and stuff out there that have like a very clear influence from Catcher in the Rye, but that's the basic premise, right? It's kind of like this kid who is starting to realize that like everything's kind of fake. Um, and there's truth to it. So like, I think when people first read it, especially if they're going through that kind of disillusioned state, it feels like this, wow, preach, like this guy's actually saying it. And I remember, when I was young, it's like it felt like Holden was somehow like just in touch with like some inner deeper truth that like everyone else just didn't get. And I actually broke the rule here, and so I need to fix it, because I'm not allowed to do that kind of rendering. Now I was like doing straight up rendering, and I can't do that. Self-guided rules on comics. So anyhow, my point is like, I don't want to be Holden Caulfield. Like, I think maybe when I was younger, I would have, but now I look back on that and I kind of feel bad for the kid, because I'm like, man, that sucks. But like, the hard part about Holden Caulfield is like, he's not like, he's just going to have a nervous break. Like, there's no solution to like what he's talking about. Like, it's just life, and life is hard, and like people are hypocritical, and things are not what they should be, and like we try but we fail at things, and people often say things they don't mean, and like there's a lot of these like kind of truths that just feel really heavy, um that are maybe really heavy, but like there's no real solution. So I don't want to be that guy, um to where I'm like saying like something without a solution, as if it's like, man, and if this doesn't get fixed, like all of reality is terrible or something. I'm just saying, like, I just think we could do better. I don't know how, though. I don't know how we do better. But I will say that's the fight you have to do if you're making independent work. And like, I just thought it was worth addressing, because Corey had mentioned it, before, I started streaming, and it was in context with social media. And then it just instantly made me think of comics, because I was realizing like, yeah, I mean, social media to an extent, like the companies are at fault, but also the companies are feeding people what they want, and then the algorithm is just like doubling down and getting people addicted on the thing they asked for. So then all they get is the thing they asked for, and anyone offering the thing, like a thing that's different than what they asked for, is just going to get like buried out of the algorithm, because it's a self-fulfilling like system. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, where it's like, hey, it's like when my son was little and he goes, like for the longest time, my son wouldn't eat anything but like chicken. That's it. That's all he would eat for like food. And then he had like 2 other snacks that he would eat. And, we had to really convince him, like, there's other foods, like you got to try other things. He still has like favorites, but like he almost had to be like forced, not force fed or anything, but he almost had to be forced and coerced into trying other food, because like an older and wiser person's there who knows. Like when I was a kid, I used to think things I hadn't tried would be like terrible. And you have to get kids to learn how to try things, because if they can't, they're going to have a really tough time in life, right? Because that's just going to really restrict their ability to socialize, their ability to kind of function in the world, all of that stuff. And like, so it's not easy for a kid like my son to like have tried new things. But then what's funny is, just like the green eggs and ham thing, right? Like, you try new things and then guess what happens? Like, oh my gosh, it's crazy, but like, this actually is better, or like, I love this thing. Or you go, I hate this thing, but I appreciate that I tried it. And there's like a million children's books that are out there trying to convince kids to not limit their food, right? Because there's more to it than food. It's like, it's a much deeper thing than just food. It's like, it's everything. Like, if people, and I think that's where we're this is the darker part, but it's like, I definitely feel like comics are having that issue right now. And I'm not trying to say like mainstream comics. I'm saying indie comics have this issue. Um, I'm excited because there's a variety of indie comics out there and stuff, but I think indie comics actually have this issue, not just mainstream comics. Um, like, people want the same exact thing, even in indie comics. And like, it's like the kid who just doesn't want to try green eggs and ham. And when you're selling an independent comic that's outside of the norm, or it's not like something that's an easy sell, where you're like, hey, this is like the Ghostbusters, but if you took the Ghostbusters and mixed it with like Miami Vice, like, that's an easy sell, because there's people out there who like Ghostbusters, and there's people out there who are nostalgic about Miami Vice. You know what I mean? Like, we have to kind of put, like, and I'm not saying that's bad. I even sincerely am thinking about, after this being done, if I'm able to write a script that's based on the little memes we've been creating on stream, about like how fun it would be to have like a fake Victorian novel that literally is like a Miami Vice episode. So I'm not, again, like, I don't want this to come across as like criticism. And I'm not trying to shirk away from like owning what I'm saying. I just like, I don't think what I'm saying is meant as like a thing that, like, I'm not trying to like point the finger and be like, haha, you guys. I'm more like, isn't it weird that we're in this situation, and what can we do to avoid it from becoming like a situation where, like, again, you're going to be at like restaurants, and all you see, like, just imagine that, like, if all there was just like hot dogs, every place you went, it's just hot dogs. And maybe like, this hot dog has mustard, and this hot dog is like, you have Chicago dog, you have an LA dog, but every single restaurant is just hot dogs. And it's like, they, to the point where like, the food conventions all become hot dog conventions, where it's like, oh, okay, here we go. We're going to sell some hot dogs, but this one's unique because this is a Chicago style dog. And I'm saying this as a person who, like, I'm a fan of hot dogs. They're not bad food. That's most comic conventions are like the freaking hot dog thing I just described, right? It's like, most comic conventions are selling you the exact same story with a different costume, the exact same story with a different costume. And it's frustrating. And I think it's frustrating for the people making the exact same story with a different costume. That's the part that I'm like, I want to see change. And maybe I'm crazy. Oh, CB Smallwood said, I got to go. Great show. Awesome train of thought. Catch you all later. Awesome. Yeah, CB Smallwood said, I'm part of the woe is me generation. It's hard to shake that. And then Sticky said, it has to do a lot with narcissistic personality and issues it causes. Definitely ahead of his time. Yeah, like the like Holden Caulfield, exactly. And again, like, I think that that's a great book. It's an excellent book. And again, it's great for like like, for instance, so like when my son turns like 14, maybe 15, depending, I'm going to try to get him to read Catcher in the Rye. It's a good book. It makes you question authority. It's good because pretty much most like 16-year-olds, especially 16, are super narcissistic. So it makes sense. It's like, it's a perfect story, but it doesn't have a lot of solutions, and a lot of it is just like kind of dissecting what's wrong with everybody and not looking at what's right about everybody, right? Like it's so that's why I was saying like I'm not trying to be Holden Caulfield in this kind of conversation. But I do think I don't know, like I'm open to hearing ways to change it. The only thing I can think is just to try to do what I do, make it the best I can, and then let the chips fall where they do. And honestly, I'm making this stuff because I think it needs to be out there. And I need to be content with that. And then occasionally, I'll make the tchotchke or the thing that like people want, like the fast food. If I have to do that to kind of like eat, that's okay. But if I only do that, I will lose my mind because I don't like eating the same like, and I'm a weird person. I'm slightly autistic, I think. I can eat the same food over and over and over again and not get tired of it. But even I get tired of the same food every time. Like it's just I don't know. And I feel like it's very strange when like when you see it on the ground, when you see people literally just walk to the exact same spot and go, "Oh, this is like that thing I love." It's a really weird thing. And then it makes me judgmental of myself on that because I do that. I am obviously drawn to stuff I already like and stuff. So anyhow, hopefully I didn't go too dark. I'm open to changing the topic too. But that's what kind of was on my mind. One of the darker sides of I guess it didn't go that dark. I can go a lot darker than that. But my point is I do try to like even like so bringing that up, that thought will occasionally come like when you're trying to push a book or something unique. And then the only thing I can say to kind of combat it is I think it's important. I think it's important to do whether other people think it's important or not. And you have to kind of believe in it. That's another thing. You kind of have to believe in what you're doing because like no one else is going to believe in what you're doing. Um, is that right? No, but is that the way it is? It tends to be. Um, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if did I miss anything. That's it. Sticky said, "Look, let me share that. That's look at this beauty. Look within to be the change you want to see. 100%." And that's why I was saying like I tried when I was going through this rant in my head. I do want to actually own the fact that I have some ownership in this. It's not just them. It's not they who want it, right? When I think about it, this affects me 100%. And there's things that I can do to kind of change it too, you know? Does that mean that like tomorrow I'm going to stop watching Stranger Things? No, are you kidding me? Like when I'm done with this comic, like I it has been killing me that I haven't been able to watch the rest of Stranger Things. Does it mean that I won't like binge watch a bunch of Disney Plus stuff? No, of course I'm going to binge watch the Disney Plus stuff. I love that stuff. But can I maybe try to change it up or like be a little more intentional about trying to change it up? And try something new that's a little different. And for me, actually, oddly enough, like I was thinking about, I think I was talking about this with you, Adam, yesterday. Adam said, "Believe in yourself. Let's make really great stuff. Sorry to be so dark." Yeah, I guess that's true. But it's like, I guess I am just kind of saying tropes, but it's like, I do think there's something to that. Like, I think that like it can be like for me, actually, consciously like maybe buying more superhero comics would be good for me because I've like been so invested in these like literary comics and stuff that I kind of don't read superhero comics. So for me, changing it up might mean buying more of like the same exact thing that everyone else is reading. You know what I mean? Um I'm just saying, like, in a weird way, like, because I've gotten so out of that, I might be missing some of the good stuff just out of sheer contrarianism, you know? Um, because I know in our community there's some really cool superhero stuff. I mean, Jeff Lafferty has Berserkanaut, like, um, you know, there's just really cool stuff. I think CB Smallwood's got like his his uh Wildcat anthology, and it's like that's pretty cool and awesome. Um, and I think it's still running on Kickstarter, and I'm hoping it'll get funded, you know. And that's, I think, slightly superhero, but like not bad. It's his own thing, you know. And it does draw on some other stuff, but it's like it's cool. Um, but like things, I don't know. So for me, that is me getting out of my wheelhouse. Is like I need to actually support probably a little bit of that, because I could be doing the reverse where I'm like, I just want more of the same. Like I like my indie stuff, you know? And then wouldn't it be sad if like I'm like so obsessed with indie stuff that I like this is gonna be like a music snob thing. But imagine somebody who's so into like underground stuff that you just miss Dylan, you know? Like um for anybody who's like I think into music, like they'd be like, oh man, you know, like for audiophiles and stuff. Like, can you imagine somebody who's just so obsessed with the main, like the underground, that they just like miss like Bob Dylan? Like, I don't know. And then again, there's probably somebody out there who just like absolutely hates Bob Dylan, who's like, hell yeah, I miss Bob Dylan. But my point is like, I think for most people who are like fans of music, they'd be like, okay, that was somebody who was like a cultural icon and huge and like almost treated like a god, and makes great music, and like I don't think has a bad album. um and there's a lot of that out there, you know, like anyhow, so I don't even know what the objective or direction I was going there. Intentfulness is key, though. I got into the graffiti scene but could not deal with all the rules. Oh man. Yeah, are there rules to that scene? Because it's like I definitely noticed that with a lot of scenes. I used to do event posters. I wonder if you mean maybe it's the same rules, or I'd be curious. Um, but it's like I got into doing gig posters for a little bit, and then I didn't know the whole approach, and I had to like kind of research it and all this stuff. So I finally found out how you get like official band approval, who you contact to kind of get the approval to do a event poster for a gig, how you kind of divvy it up, like whether it's for pay or for like they get copies of the poster and they'll sell half the run and you do this limited run thing. And there's all these like rules to like how it's set up. Jeff Lafferty just hopped in and said, "Who's Bob Dylan? Like a cowboy? Oh, come on." And then Gibran's like, "I hate Bob Dylan," which is hilarious because I have a suspicion that Jib's a secret Dylan fan. Um, anyhow, so it's rules to know how to do letters, but my way is just different. Yeah, I can understand that. Well, that's actually kind of cool though, because graffiti's supposed to be kind of open with that. Um, I think my favorite graffiti artist would be like, it may not be popular because he makes some stuff that's a little contentious, but Mike Giant I think is like probably one of the best like just script letterers and graffiti like known to man. He does stuff that just blows my mind. But anyhow, so like yeah, in the gig poster scene, like kind of like you were talking about with rules, the weird thing was gig poster artists are like super territorial, and I had no idea going in when I was green to it. So I got like to do a like a Not a Surf poster, which is funny because most people who like are in, like hear Not a Surf think that popular song and they're like, ugh, that band must be awful. They're amazing. Like I would back that band like 100%. Pretty much every album. They've had like one or two weak ones, but like holy crap, is Not a Surf like one of those under the radar, had a radio hit that was kind of annoying, and then just were like these secret superpower amazing albums. Um, anyhow, so I was a big fan, particularly like Blonde on Blonde. It's like probably my one of my favorite songs of all time, which is referencing Bob Dylan. Anyhow, so I get approval from the band, I get approval from their manager, I get approval from the venue. And generally you just need 2 approvals to get it. But I'm like, okay, cool, I'm clear. So I make the gig poster, I show up to the event, and then the next day I get like a threatening call from a guy who's like, I do the event posters in that territory, and that's my turf. And he's like, if I ever see you doing gig posters there again, we're gonna fight. Like, it was insane. And then they were like grilling me, like, did you get band approval? And I had to like forward my email, and it was like this whole weird thing where I'm like, holy crap, like this is a fellow artist, but like they get territorial. And I can kind of understand, because it's like, I guess once you get embedded in a scene. But it was the most weird thing. And I remember telling a friend of mine who was at the time doing way more event posters, and they're like, oh yeah, that's going to happen all the time. And I was like, what? Like, it's this weird like subculture of like gig poster artists that are just like fighting each other in dark alleys or something. I don't know if Jib's still in the chats. I know Jib like goes to like South by Southwest sometimes, and there's a ton of gig poster artists up there. Are they like fighting each other in cage fights up there? Like, anyhow, I'm just saying, gig posters, I had no idea there were like, there's rules, even like social rules, where you're like, holy crap, it's insane. They get tough. Yeah, and then Adam was saying, Not a Surf for Me went from a guilty pleasure to one hit wonder, to realizing most of their music is pretty solid. Also, Jeff, I complimented Berserker Not about 10 minutes ago, but you can't back it up. You have to think I wouldn't compliment it. You have to just have this perception. Man, I've been watching Jeff and Jib's streams a lot, actually. I really enjoy them. It sucks because generally, like, most of the time, we're usually doing Artcasters the same time they're doing Artcasters, and like I always have to catch it after the fact, and then every once in a while I'll catch it on like the latter end. But today I was kind of like, I gotta stream because I have this thing I want to vent about. Best time to stream, but also because I have to finish flatting this page. Sticky said, I had a guy on here harassing me on my tech deck account. I post my tricks, and when I buy new tech decks, some guy telling me I copied all my content from another creator. Oh, that sucks, man. I don't know how that works. Like, I don't even know what a tech deck is. You got to explain that. Yeah, I'd be curious. I'm doing some Purple Mountains Majesty right now, guys, except this is not in America. This is just creating like an ambiance perspective. I got like a photo kind of from a similar, scene. It's giving me a rough idea of like colors. My main idea that I want to pull from the photo is like, I want to know what the buildings are colored, because I don't know a ton about this area. I kind of think we can get there. I'm actually pretty happy with how this is looking, though. If you look at the part that's done, that looks pretty epic, right? Am I crazy? Like, I don't know. Like, this comic's been weird because I am kind of shocked that it's working, because I've been working in a totally different style than I usually do, and it's kind of shocking. I guess it's not that surprising. Like, all of us as artists do stuff in different styles, like, and we get used to kind of changing it up. I mean, I've seen like, I don't know if Jeff is still here, but it's like I've seen Jeff like work in like 4 different styles. He's got his 2 main styles from what I've seen. But it's like, I don't doubt if Jeff wanted to like work in like, I mean, if Jeff wanted to do a comic like in the style of like Jeff Smith, like, I think he could. Like, he's such a capable artist. I don't think there's a style that he couldn't tackle. You know what I mean? But still, I think even Jeff, like, who's way more seasoned at art than I am, it's like, I think even he'd be like a little bit intimidated, like trying a totally different style that, like, so I don't know, maybe I'm alone on that, but like for me, if I try something and I'm like, I think this will actually work if I do this process and like set it up this way, it's like, and then it actually works. Even though I kind of theoretically, I did some sample pages and stuff, so I'm like, I think I can do this. But I'm still kind of pleasantly surprised that I haven't hit like a major roadblock, because that can happen sometimes when you shift up styles where you're like, oh man, um, it's like what was that? Oh, like on Arrested Development, when they go like, I've made a huge mistake. It's like that. There's definitely those moments in trying something in art, especially on a deadline, because when you're trying it on a deadline and then you're suddenly hitting that point where it's not working. I should actually give some credit for this style too. I used to hang with this guy, Chris Oatley, back when Kevin and I were doing podcasts. And there was this time where like we were kind of both Kevin and I were like freelance illustrators at this time. And it was like, as happens in freelance illustration, like both of us hit like a total dry period. Which like for freelance, like feast and famine is the name of the game. Like you're gonna have, and like the neat thing is you stay at it long enough and then like you'll hit like less and less famine periods. But anyhow, both Kevin and I think we're pretty dry for work. And then Chris Oatley like reached out to us and was like, dude, I've been hired to like draw like, or no, he was hired as the colorist on like all these drawings that were done for like the reboot for Activision of like Legends of Zork, which at the time was like just a website, and you'd like it wasn't even really a game. It was like a programmed thing where you'd like click yes or no, and it just had these really cool illustrations that had like kind of a painterly style to the way that. So anyhow, Chris Oatley showed us like some tips for like how he would take like flat colors, which both Kevin and I knew how to do, and then add like textures of like paint over it to kind of give it this like thing. So anyhow, my point is, not all of this, but yeah, like my color experience changed. Like Chris Oatley helped me. I think he's fairly well known nowadays, but it's like that guy helped me level up my colors a lot. Although honestly, I forget what it's called, where you just do kind of literal color, which is actually what I tend to kind of do with like subtle shifts. Um, but especially on a comic like this, where I'm wanting the line work to do most of the work, I'm not going to do a lot. Although I will say a lot of like sort of um, play. I'm still kind of curious from yesterday. I was going back and forth about this top panel, where I'm not sure whether to have light pouring in because it looked a little weird with the white. I might have to fix that up. And then Adam said it's hard to imagine Jeff drawing something that did not look really good regardless of the style. Yeah. And then he said like the way Frank Frazetta could switch from painting to really cartoony stuff to fun fantasy illustrations, and then local color. That's pretty rad though. It was nice to see. It was kind of funny that Jeff and Jib stopped by. I really enjoy their stream. They'll get a little saucy sometimes, but I like it, Let's see here. They're also like they're just really funny too, like very humorous, but also like super talented and inspiring artists. Okay, I've been going for about an hour. I'm going to go ahead and put on the trailer for Jacob's apartment. Yeah, local color, yeah. Um Yeah, that's true. Adam was saying it's hard to imagine Jeff drawing something that did not look really good regardless of the style. Agreed. Yeah, he's incredible. I am going to put on the trailer for Jacob's apartment and I'll be right back. Thanks you guys for showing up. I actually thought this was starting so late, like I might not get folks coming in, so I appreciate it. Sticky, it's fun to have you back too. I really appreciate it. All right, so let's. Oh, Sticky Art also was saying that Tech Decks came out in the 90s. And then he said, I think you can choose any style you want to as long as it is consistent within the project. Yeah, I agree. And then he said, I'm professionally trained traditionally in realism, but I do a lot of cartoony stuff. 100%, man. Most people I know who do cartoon, like really, really broken down cartoony stuff, can go super realistic. It's actually usually the reverse is not always the case. Like there's some people who can go really realistic and can't go very cartoony. Although honestly, I have met some people who are like super, super noodly and cartoony and can't do realistic. So it's kind of a strange thing, but here is the trailer for Jacob's Apartment. And I hope that I can finish this page tonight, but I think I don't know. We'll find out. Positivity. We'll see, guys. Here we go. Oh, wait. I was about to click the wrong thing. Okay, here it is. Speak clearly, it seems that only in dreams can we be these things we've seen and walk around breathing pain. I don't know the part to play in this heart of mine. There's dissonant things, they split at the seams. All right, guys, we're back. I am really it's funny because it's like as I'm coloring this now, I'm glad I included all that crazy detail. It's just it's like it's a blessing and a curse, you know what I mean? Like I've talked about this before. I don't know if you guys find this on your own personal projects, but it's like there's so many times where like I am like the worst client to myself, like of any client. Like if I had a client, you know, who was like, which in this case I kind of do, right? Because I have a collaborator who wrote the scene and wrote a city scene. But here's the thing, if this weren't like a co-creator project, I would have found a way to kind of like use atmospheric perspective to have less detail. But I just had this like hope. And again, like it's kind of weird how it's working out. Because sometimes like I will totally have the weakness of like over noodling detail. And I kind of like riding the line of that. Like you'll see that a lot in Two Stories where I like to do a little too much on the art instead of like kind of letting some areas sort of sit. And it's like it can succeed, or like when you do that, it's like you're leaving less big shapes. And so the like it's very much not working in the Marvel way. Like the Marvel way is like, and that's not to say Marvel Comics didn't like, you know, have depth or interest in it, but like, you know, in the How to Draw the Marvel Way book, right? Like it always talks about like, you know, you don't have to show everything. In fact, if you, and it even has a chart where it's like, this is like the super rendered approach. And then this is like the kind of like mid-level approach, which is kind of like the Marvel way, where it's like you have really solid areas of black, solid shapes. They're easy to read from a distance. At the time, they worked better with the print restrictions of comics at the time. All the printers have become much better, but they're also more expedient. Like it's a much quicker way to work. But anyhow, so I would probably, if this wasn't a creator-owned project, like where I'm getting a piece of that, the royalties and got a chunk of the advance, like we're pretty much like splitting it like 50-50. In that case, like I want it to be awesome. Like and again, like even if it doesn't make a dime, I want it to be worth my while because comics just don't pay enough to be worth my while. Like they're not. I don't know. They just don't for anyone. Like for most people, at least the kinds of stories I'm interested in. So if I'm gonna do something that's a risk, I want to take a risk that's fun and cool and like has the potential to at least be something I can be proud of. So even if it doesn't, soar in the market or whatever, I feel like I've made like this is where I get all artsy fartsy, but it's like where I feel like I've made some art. So anyhow, when it comes to like a page like this, to like go in there and noodle like all of these little details that don't necessarily need to be there for like the story to tell itself, like to draw like a bunch of windows and just crazy detail. And even when I looked at the inks, I'm like, I went a little overboard on that, but I bet it's going to look cool when I flat it. If I'm patient when I flat it, and I actually flat like every individual level. And now I'm seeing that happen and I'm like, holy crap, that's really cool. Like I'm pretty happy with that last panel. I think I need to take away some of the white from the panel above, but we'll get there if we get there. But anyhow, again, like I can be my worst client though, because if I like, if when I'm up against the deadline and it's creator owned stuff, I get extra, like I still want it to look really good. Like I want it to kind of fit my vision. And so I'll do like weird things like where I'm like, I'm gonna draw every freaking detail on this area. But then that made the page like take twice as long to draw, and now it's gonna make the coloring process like take like, you know, 20 times longer to do. But it's so much worth it because I'm like, this page, like when I turn to it, I'm gonna feel really good about this page. Is that nerdy? Because I do a lot of stuff that's like quick one and done, like very quick shortcuts, tons of vector work, at my day job. And so it's like, do I want to just knock that stuff out? But then again, like that's that thing where I was saying it's tempting sometimes, man. It's tempting. Because I think Corey was talking about this too with social media, but it like rewards sometimes like the least effort, gets rewarded the most in social media. And so like I'll see a friend do like an entire like brilliant like stop motion thing that takes forever and like it gets views, but then they'll do like a stream that's like kind of goofy and fun and like I love it too. And that'll get like way more views. Like I've seen that happen with animators too, where it's like they'll make like a full animated movie and it's like it gets less views than like somebody just like doing what I'm doing, just going on a stream and just kind of knocking stuff out. And it's like I'm not even saying that's wrong. It's just like it when that is the case, it's like I can see if you're like somebody who's working in animation, it would be really tempting to just be like, you know what, I'm just gonna like not. I'm gonna do these real quick, like I'm gonna feed the fast food to the machine, you know. Um, but I don't know. Maybe I'm dumb. Maybe I'm like the guy who keeps getting in the ring, and eventually I'm gonna be like, kid, don't do boxing. Like I don't know. Who knows? But right now I'm still in it, and I still am like the engine that could or whatever. Where I'm like, I think I can. I think that if I, and I have seen this in my life where if you stick with stuff, there do tend to be rewards that happen. Like people do care. It's like, and also weirdly enough, it can be really therapeutic to realize like no one cares too, which is kind of freeing because that frees me up to do something like this page where I'm like, dude, no one but me. I mean, I think there's other people, but I don't know if everyone but me is going to really care that I like went in here and like flatted this entire sequence with like a whole bunch of different things, but I'm going to care because I really like the way that's coming out, And I think a lot of us do that with art where we throw in the thing because it's like, this is the thing that's supposed to be the art thing, I don't know. Man, you guys, we're almost to 2:00, which is where I have to do my cutoff. And I was really hoping to finish this page. I even worked on flatting this during Artcasters too. And I even feared, I think on yesterday's stream, which I try to avoid fear in art, but man, I had like a real, like, I think I delayed for like 20 minutes working on this page. Oh, great. My Wacom is flipping out again. Hold on a second. Is it just frozen? Be interesting to see. Thank you. Okay. Let's try this again. Is the Wacom? Yes. Okay, I'm going to save. Okay. Well, let's try that again. So anyhow, I had this moment on the stream yesterday where I was like delaying this panel because I just kind of knew that this was coming. Like the second I drew this panel, it took forever to draw, and I was like, I kind of need to take forever to draw because I like really like the way this is coming out. But then when it came to flatting it too, I was like, oh man. You guys can watch it like yesterday. Adam was on the stream. We had a really good conversation actually. Adam said, good stream. I'm getting ready to put up the first of 100 painted skateboards. Awesome. See, now I think I know what you're talking about. You were talking about decks, like skate decks. Okay, that's cool. I love skate decks, man. I did a series of skate decks for a skateboard company a long time ago called Worship Skateboards. And my first comic, this was like a really cool thing. I still have, like, I think my own copy of the deck, like hiding somewhere in my garage, but there was actually a skateboard deck that the company ran, that Worship Skateboards ran, that had the cover of my first comic Numb on it. And then what they would do is they would package like the comic and the skate deck together so people could buy like the comic book and the skateboard deck. And I think at the time I didn't realize that's like kind of an unusual thing for like just a company to reach out and do, where they're like, hey, you do skateboards, can you like do this? And then they gave me a bunch of, like, it was one of those swap deals. So I think at the time they would just send me free skate decks, and then I could sell those at shows. And that was awesome because those skateboards like literally paid for like quite a few conventions back in the day. Because, people will shy away about like spending, even $5 on a comic book. But like people who like skateboards, like they don't blink before dropping like $80 on like a custom art skateboard that's screen printed. Like, yeah, but I love skateboards. I used to skate. Full transparency, I was never that good at skating. I was always the guy who, I knew a lot of skaters. I could ollie, and that was about it. Like, but I was definitely not a person who could do like half pipes and stuff like that. So like Kevin, like my friend Kevin, he's a much more serious skater, and he also stayed with skateboarding, where it's like I got to an age where I was just like, I just can't. Like, I had one time where I did a different skateboard client, like I had done some art for them, and they sent me a deck along with the art, and I was like, I am actually like, because I had quite a few of these skateboard decks that I'd done art for, and I was like, you know what, I've never actually like, put like trucks and wheels and bearings and everything on them. So I'm gonna like go to a skateboard shop, which I haven't been to in like at this point it was like a decade, which is funny because that was like a decade ago. But it had been like a decade since I had skateboarded. But I was like, I'm gonna like trick this thing out, see if they have some of the same stuff, and like yeah, like build a skateboard, get grip tape, like get it all set up, and then like carve it up on like a deck that I made. And so I did this. I went to like a skateboard shop. I dropped, at the time it was like $100 or something on all the different parts and stuff. Assembled the deck. I was stoked because they still have like Spitfire and like a bunch of the different things that I liked at the time when I did used to skate. And then like, so I get it all set up and I go outside and I ollie and I clear a curb and I'm like, sweet. And then right after that, I ollie and I lose it. And then I couldn't walk for like a week. And I was like, okay, I can't skateboard anymore. Because that was back when I was full-time freelance. And so that cost me like a bunch of jobs just because I was a jackass trying to ride a skateboard in like at the time like my 30s. So I can't even imagine now where I'm like in my 40s. I'm like, no, hell no, hell no. But credit to people who did, because I think the guys that I know that are my age that still skateboard, just never stopped. I think that's the only way you can kind of do it is like if you just keep with it, you'll be able to skateboard into like a long, healthy age. But if you like stop for like a decade, then trick out your own skate deck, like yeah, you're pretty much screwed. Like or maybe I'm just that bad at skating. I never was that good at it, full transparency. But it is funny because even at TCAF, like I went outside because I used to smoke as well, like cigarettes, and now I vape to avoid smoking cigarettes. It's like the one thing, and it's a terrible habit, but whatever. That has nothing to do with the story. So at TCAF, um, when I'm there in Toronto, I like go out to vape while like I'm like leave the table, go outside to vape, and the great thing, this is the one thing I will say that's positive about smoking, even though smoking is a terrible habit and none of you should do it. There is this like beautiful thing about socializing and smoking. Like I have met and had so many interesting conversations with people just because we were both in a situation where we were like outside of a bar or outside of a show or outside somewhere in a smoking area smoking. And I mean, it's not a good reason to smoke, so don't do it. But my point is like, this was one of those occasions where there's somebody out there who's also vaping nicotine. And like we strike up a conversation. And then at the end of the conversation, I was just like, you skate, don't you? And he's like, yep. And I'm like, yeah, I can't explain it. Maybe Sticky can kind of explain it, but like it's like people who, even if you don't skateboard now, there's a vibe to just people who used to skate. Like Kevin and I had that too. Like when I was at when we first met, like my friend Kevin Cross and I like were at like a zine. I had never met Kevin. I think we had both known Javi, like Javier Hernandez. I think we both interacted with him like online, but we didn't like know each other. And so maybe we weren't even talking to Javi at this point because it's like we were kind of strangers at this zine fest, but I was actually selling some of those skateboard decks. And Kevin came by and like asked me all these questions about skateboarding. And then at the time we were kind of young and cocky, so we made a few jokes about some of the people selling zines, which is kind of cruel, but whatever. We were young kids, and kids do a lot of crap talking. And I don't know, there was just this sense like, okay, we're both illustrators, we both live in Portland, we both like used to skate at least, and like we both like punk rock. And there's no podcast about illustration, so that's how we ended up like starting like a podcast about it. But what's funny is I think there is like a thing about just people in skate culture who like know, like I don't know. I've even had times at my day job where I'll meet like a client and I just get this vibe, and then they'll mention like that they skateboard or they used to skateboard, or like one of the guys that I know, I can't talk too much about work, but was a professional skateboarder. in their past. And I just asked them, like, because I just got that weird vibe again where I was like, did you used to skate? And they're like, oh yeah, like I used to actually do it professionally. And I was like, holy crap, like it's just a weird, I don't know, there's a Sticky, do you know what I'm talking about? Like, I don't know. But the other thing is when I started skateboarding, it was like Santa Cruz decks were like the thing. Like, and I mean like the old ones. So like the deck that I learned how to skateboard on was like the one that it it was like wider at the front, and then like they had just modified the skateboard to have the front end kind of tip up a little bit, but it wasn't like the modern skateboard deck. Um, but I also partially got into it because I loved the art on Santa Cruz decks in the 80s. And that was actually like a huge influence on especially like my t-shirt style. So anyhow, I relate to that a lot, Sticky. He said custom painted boards go for 100 to 1K, commonly some even more. And then he was saying, LOL, I don't know. Anyhow, I don't know. I think there is something about like just, I don't know, you can just tell when somebody skateboards, especially when you speak to them in person. There's even a friend of mine who's like teaches college and like was one of my professors, and then we became friends because we just were like, wait a minute, you used to skate. Like it's just, I don't know, I can't explain it. It's just a weird nerdy thing. Secret skate society. That'll be my next book. Next book. If I ever finish this book, holy crap, these are taking way too long, you guys. Way too long. But it is looking cool. All right, I'm going to push a little past 2. Don't tell anyone, okay? I have to be careful, though, because I will tell you today, now I'm curious, especially for you night owls. It's confession time. I had the craziest moment when I got home today. I was like driving home from my job, and I got hit with like the most insane, like paranoid, deluded thoughts. Like I came up with an entire conspiracy. It was like this, and it was like really convincing. Like I was just like, by the time I got home, I was like 100% convinced. Like kind of like one of those like the whole world's out to get me kind of things, you know. And I don't want to get into like too many specifics on it, but it's like it was like it's hard to explain like how much I was just like, this makes it's like I've written about like depression, you know, because I definitely deal with depression sometimes. And one of the hard parts about navigating depression that I talk about in 2 stories is like when you're in the thick of depression, it just seems like really logical. Like at least for me, whenever I get in the thick of it, it's like it's just like it's almost like the sanest person in the room is talking to me and telling me these like terrible things about reality, and it's just so true that how could I at all ignore this like just completely salient logic, you know what I mean? And what's weird is when you're out of it, like when I, you know, if I'm not in like a depressive state, which luckily I haven't been in a long time, but it's like I know I'm prone to it, so I have to be careful. But it's like when I'm out of it, I'll look back and be like, that was completely insane. Like that was not logical. Like that was completely insane what I was thinking. But when you're in the thick of it, it just seems like the most rational thing. This was like that, but with just total paranoia and like a whole conspiracy I had constructed. And I like while I was thinking it, I had this thing. I had worked out this whole thing where I'm like, this is just the most rational conspiracy in the world and stuff. And it's not like a political conspiracy theory or something. It was like a life conspiracy where I was like, you know, everyone's out to get me kind of thing. And I also knew in the back of my head, I was like, well, I am exhausted. I haven't gotten a lot of sleep lately. This is probably just like really exhausted thinking, because there's like a point of exhaustion where you're like, that just is going to happen. like, so anyhow, I know that in the back of my head, but I still like it's hard because if your head is literally telling you like, hey, this thing is completely logical, but then your logic is also telling you like, yeah, but it's probably not. This is probably just exhaustion. It's like this weird dynamic. And I'm not pretending this is like something unique or like a horrible thing. I just thought it was an amusing thing to talk about. Anyhow, so point being, I get home, I kind of like I talked to my wife, and I'm just like, "Hey, okay, I'm really tired, right?" And she's like, "Yeah, of course you're tired. You've been like not sleeping and stuff like that." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And she's like, "You've been hitting it hard to get this deadline, so it makes sense." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I like kind of need somebody to hear me out, and just see if this is insane or not. Because if this is exhaustion, like I need to know because it seems like it's like just completely rational." I go on to explain this like wacky paranoid delusion that my exhausted self has come up with, which I'm like, the weird thing is I don't get these. I don't think I've gotten these in my life a lot. I think it's like a pretty rare occurrence. And usually it would be like in a scenario where I have not slept in a very long time. So anyhow, I'm exhausted. I'm having this like total like thing happen, and I tell my wife this stuff, and she's like, "Yeah, you need to sleep." And so like I was like, "Okay." And then I actually was just I had convinced myself so much that I had to talk to another friend just to be like, "What's your take on this? Do you think this is just me being sleepy, or do you think like this is like salient?" 'Cause to me it seems just like really logical. And they're like, "Dude, just go to sleep." So I'm like, okay, I've had like two trusted people I know tell me that like this is probably not true, which is why it's good to have this is actually a really good way to deal uh with your life. Have trusted people around you who will tell you if you're full of shit. It can keep you on the right path, I think. But anyhow, so I was like, okay, I trust these people. They've both told me this thing. Um, I'm gonna fight the urge to just like stay up and like just obsess about this thing, and I'm gonna sleep. So I slept for like 2 hours. Just took my little like I do a power nap to kind of maintain the schedule I'm doing now, and then I woke up and it was like I could see completely clearly, and like the whole thing was just it was completely exhaustion. It was just tiredness, just yeah, taking over. Where like just the tired brain was like, "Yeah, dude, you're gonna get some crazy ideas." And I'm glad I slept. That's all I'm saying. So hopefully that doesn't make me sound like a lunatic or something, because it's like I feel like I'm a pretty normal person, but that was a weird one. That was an interesting one, and I luckily have learned to kind of recognize a little bit when like those, like if that kind of thing ever kicks up its ugly head, being a person who like again like has had struggles with depression and stuff, it's like I tend to know, like I even talk about that in my comic, but I tend to know when like the dark cloud, that's usually what a lot of people like referring it, but I tend to know that voice and go, okay, that's not my thoughts, that's like depression speaking. um but in this case it was just like this wasn't a depression thing, this was just a sheer the body is meant to sleep kind of exhaustion. um so yeah, so that was interesting, that happened. And now I'm gonna look, and 0 people are watching the stream. I'm just kidding, but I don't know. I don't know if you guys have ever had that like super late. I have friends who are insomniacs, and not like sarcastically insomniacs. Like
I actually have a relative who's like a legit insomniac, and they will have like moments of like those wild kind of like, it's like the thing I think like a lot of us, like a lot of mental health stuff, like if you're doing that, you're usually making not making lists like lists on a wall, but like lists of like wrongs, or lists of all the reasons like the world is, ending, or lists of like all of your failures. It's like, I don't know. I feel like mental illness likes lists. Like, and they're not positive lists. They're not like things to do today. They're like lists that are like things to obsessively think about and get depressed about, or things to obsessively think about and get angry about. They're those kind of things. And but I was surprised and reminded of the fact that like, yeah, the byproduct of like a lack of sleep and kind of exhaustion, I had forgotten about that one. I have not had that happen in a really long time, where just the most paranoid, delusional thinking just seemed like, yeah, this is completely logical. Yep, that's why. Yeah. So anyhow, that was an interesting one. Yeah, Sticky said make sleep a priority. Yeah, I tend to. I know it's weird because I'm doing this stream late at night, but I do try to kind of juggle it well. But I think one of the hard things with making these things is you kind of have to. Corey and I used to talk about this on our 48 Hour Art Check a lot, but it's like you kind of have to straddle this line of like, at least for me, I should stop saying you, because it sounds like I'm prescribing, and it's like, no, this is just kind of how I function. But it's like the only way these things really get done for me is like I have to kind of push myself a little bit further than I'm comfortable, and that's with sleep, that's with art, with capabilities, with deadlines, and somehow it's like I have to find that sweet spot. And I've been doing it long enough to where I've found it for the most part, where I'm like not going to burn out, but I'm like close. It's like this really weird sweet spot that I tend to be able to do art in and have some semblance of like productivity. But the downside of that is like every once in a while, I just misjudge, and like I'll be like, oh, I can totally do this, and then I can't, So it's an interesting one. And I'm not also, I hope this doesn't sound like I'm bringing this up out of sympathy or something. I don't want people's sympathy for that. I just thought it would be like a funny story, Super Shine Comics said, hello, how's it going, Super Shine Comics? I'm about to hit the 2-hour mark. I want to get a little further on this, on flatting this page. But it's like, it's a beast. But I do want to get a little further. So I think I'm going to push till 3, and I'll probably cut the stream at like maybe 3:40, or not 3:40, at like 2:40. That's what I'm going to probably try to do. But what I'm going to do right now, since we've been going for 2 hours, is what I do at every hour mark. I'm going to refill my coffee and sneak out, and I will be back in about a minute. And in the interim, we will play a trailer for my graphic novel about said mental illness, called Two Stories. Boom.
So this is an interesting page. And I just realized I've actually done this a couple times in this book so far. There's another page that actually took place on like 50 Wimpole Street, and I had to do all of the like this London like street scene. I think that it takes a long time to do like a big vista scene that it takes a while to do like a big vista scene that is why isn't oh wow, the shortcut for Hugh Setch. Oh, okay, that might be why. So it takes a while to kind of do these, but I feel like if you do your due diligence as a colorist on this kind of thing, did I miss somehow like the stray? There's some pixel art for you, Adam. I think I somehow had continuous turned off. There we go. Missed a few little stray pixels, and that's not cool. You want this stuff to be kind of pixel perfect. So I've talked about this before, but I feel like if you do your due diligence and you really get in there and kind of like color everything in the drawing, it just like really helps the drawing like sing, But also, this is one of the reasons a lot of people, especially if you're doing like a different type of art. Oh, Sticky Art said it only takes 30 to 7 hours awake for a sane person to go temporarily psychopathic. Yeah, that's true. And then Super Shine Comics said hello. And then Sticky said, nice, catch you later. Cool. That was cool. Sticky has been stopping by the channel every once in a while, and I really appreciate it. It's fun to hear him. He has like I think a much bigger audience on YouTube, and he's a nice guy, and like he seems to be doing some really cool art and positive videos, which I think is really cool. We need positivity out there. I think I went pretty negative on this stream, so I appreciate him kind of hanging in there and hanging out with me while I draw. Yeah. Let's see here. I think that now that we've talked about all this sleep stuff, I might have to give up the ambition of finishing this page tonight. As much as that kind of sucks to say, because it's like I want to push myself, but also I do think it might be a good call to kind of end the stream at some point. But first, I do want to get a little further. Because again, like I really enjoy this sort of process of like kind of like seeing it come together. It's very addictive too, flat coloring. There was a time where I thought it would be fun to be a comic book colorist. And then I did more flat colors, and I realized if I'm not flatting my own work, like I would not want to be a colorist having to color this page who didn't draw it, because there are some lines here that like might be really hard for like a different person to understand, whereas it's like I know exactly what I was trying to say there. I'm trying to get a little atmosphere in there. I'm looking at this picture up there that's of like a more modern Genoa, Italy, just to get like some of the more iconic buildings, like a better guesstimate of like an accurate color that would be a little close. So I've noticed it has like these kind of peaches and stuff. But yeah. But we'll see how far we can get without kind of writing it too far
it might be better to just go till about 2:30, and then I think like the plus side of that is we'll finish the page. I don't know if you guys have ever had, well, I'm sure you guys have. I think like as an artist, it's always hard to tell the fine line between ambition and persistence and planning. And I'm pretty good at all three of those. But the problem with ambition, persistence, and planning is they all kind of infringe on each other. Like they all conflict. I mean, persistence, I think, would be like the most consistent thing. That's like, that doesn't require a ton of stuff other than just kind of, well, no, persistence can interfere with planning. You kind of need persistence to do graphic novels, I think. Like you almost have to have a little bit of a lunatic inside of you that's like, you have to kind of push a little further. And I don't think that's just graphic novels. I think that's writers too. I think most people I know write books and stuff. Like they have like a thing that just compels them to write. It's like, you know, they plan it. They like the weird thing is even writers I know who've had like some success with their writing often could like repeat the same thing, like kind of tying into the beginning of the conversation, to like probably wild success and kind of almost make what they're doing like a formula, you know? But then for some reason, we all want to get more ambitious, right? So there's the ambition. I don't know. It's interesting. All right, guys, we're getting closer, getting a heck of a lot closer. I want to color that tree. And I also don't understand how those windows got selected again, because I like those windows the way they are. I want to color that tree something from over there. We are getting there. Luckily, I think a lot of these villages are like the same color. I'm going to look at, I think if I do them in like the grays with like the red caps, are they kind of there? I think there's a little more variety in the buildings in the back. All right. Here goes. I want this like almost like a yellow. Kind of pick some other buildings that'll be that. Maybe some of these houses too. Tiny boxes. Okay. So Artcasters had it was just a lot of fun on Scott's channel. We had Scott Campbell, the window painter, on. The guy is one of the best window painters, I think, in the world. And he's also like a super amazing guy who was also known as a clown in Portland and did art cars and all this like cool stuff. Like he just has an insanely awesome biography. And also he's one of those like very seasoned creative folks who's like pretty comfortable with who he is, you know, got through his struggles and stuff in life and is now at like kind of the point where he's retired and just loving kind of life and art. And it was just super inspiring. But also, I will say, insanely entertaining. Anytime we've had him on a couple times on Artcasters, and every time we've had him on has been just a complete joy because he is a storyteller. Man, that guy has just like, yeah, he's incredible. So anyhow, if you guys are ever curious or want to hear like a really fun, just like some crazy kind of off the wall, but like amazing stories and funny stories and just somebody who seems filled with like a lot of joy and it's just like a super interesting human being. I would recommend checking out that stream because it was a lot of fun. All right, let's see how far we can get. Yeah, I think in about 10 minutes, let's say 15 minutes, I'm going to probably end the stream and then we'll just kind of have to finish the rest tomorrow. And this is like one of those, I think I have pushed myself to run a marathon. And this is definitely that point where I might have to call it because this isn't a 1 day marathon, right? This is like I have to get this done in a year. I want to mention a cartoonist that I know. We're not like extremely tight buddies. He's a friend of a friend of a friend, but I really like him and admire him, and we've hung out before. And he's friends with Jim Lujan, and then I think one of his collaborators knew somebody I went to grad school with. So there's like some kind of 6 degrees of separation stuff that happened with us, and we had him on Artcasters once, but he has a great podcast. But anyhow, his name's Dave Baker, and he is such an inspiring dude because his output in graphic novels is just stunning. He has like a new one coming out for San Diego Comic-Con, and I think he's going to be at San Diego Comic-Con, probably boothing, called Halloween Boy. And it's crazy because I don't know if it's that he's always carving at these things simultaneously, but I have this impression that him as a cartoonist, he's like writing and just outputting books like possibly more than one a year for like graphic novels that are like written, drawn, and illustrated and often colored by him. It's really cool and inspiring stuff. And the only reason I'm mentioning it is, you know, he's insanely dedicated. He works really hard, but also like he is like, I don't know. I feel like he's almost superhuman with his ability to kind of put out comics. But I also know I don't think he sleeps a ton either. So I just wanted to call out that he's like super inspiring and has been inspiring to me. I think he's younger than I am, but it's like I find I get a lot of inspiration just seeing him being creative. writing his stuff, making his comics. I kind of get a kick out of that. Oh, and they're good. I should mention that. Yeah. Oh, so and then his podcast is called Deep Cuts. They get into like strange phenomenon. I'm trying to remember the log line for it. It's like something stories like incongruous. It's too late at night for me to remember, but I think it's like strange and interesting and incongruous stories to appear like a more interesting person at the next social gathering at work. I think that's the log line for it. But it's him and his friend Andrew Price, who's hilarious, who's like a writer and comedian, and I think like kind of overall like very intelligent guy. Like he writes like a lot of music. He's just like a very creative dude. But they have a really great podcast, and I enjoyed a lot. And I think they don't need me to plug them, but I thought I should mention that because it is funny whenever I'm up like working on comics. Every once in a while, I'll think of like Mr. Baker because he is grinding on comics. Like that's how he does it. But he's also like really exceptionally quick. And that doesn't mean quick. By quick, it's not an insult. It's like he's got a style and it works, and he doesn't take shortcuts. He'll like noodle the hell out of a page. We actually reviewed one of his books on the Indie Review Show, but I would recommend people check that out. Because if you want to see somebody grinding on comics, like just cranking away, like working hard, that would be someone to watch. Okay. We're almost there. Almost at the stop point. So I'm going to probably continue for another 10, let's say 13 minutes. See how far we can get with that. And we'll just see. We'll see what that leads to. It's probably not going to lead to a finished page. Finished flatted page. But I like it. I like this. I like where it's going. Is there a strange... Did this get offset somehow? Somehow that got offset. I have to undo. We moved the selection somehow. How did that selection shift? I'm usually not that sloppy at doing this. Has that been shifted this entire time? That's not good. Let me see if that shifted all the way over. Okay, I just need to clean up the selection then. There is a stray object here. That's something you want to avoid, obviously. Okay. We had a stray object. I'm solving the stray object issue. And that is a good sign because I usually don't sloppy color like that. So I will guess that actually means we're getting very close to the end of the stream for the night. I really wanted to say, since we got about 10 minutes left, I'll kind of continue to work on this, and then I will let people know. Thank you for hanging out and checking out the stream, keeping me company while I do art. listening to my strange, semi-vulnerable rants, which may not be so strange. But regardless, I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day. Like you guys have valuable days with valuable time. And just to do that is really cool. And I really appreciate it. And also, I hope you guys are having a productive art time. If you guys enjoy this show, please consider picking up my graphic novel, Jacob's Apartment. It is a comic book that talks about two young adults that are roommates and live in an old Victorian building in Long Beach, and are both pursuing their dreams in the arts. And everything changes when Jacob is forced to confront the death of his father to cancer and starts questioning everything about his identity, his self-worth, and the faith that he grew up in. And he is seeking to kind of find ground, solid ground to kind of stand on, but is becoming more and more untethered. And meanwhile, Sarah has gone through a very heartbreaking relationship with her boyfriend, who has moved to New York to become an editor and is seeking comfort in a bunch of one-night stands, and trying to figure out who she is amid being a young adult and trying to build a career and all that fun stuff. And as they're both going through these struggles, they find themselves drawn together. And also, they start finding commonality in their shared confusion and suffering and their love for art. And as they find themselves drawn together, their dreams start interweaving with reality. So their dreams start actually becoming what's happening in the real world. And so there's a lot of interplay with dreams. There's a side plot with a bee journeying to its destination. There is some heavy theological questions that deal with problematic parts of the Bible. There is the theme of the ghosts of our childhood following us into adulthood. It's a pretty heavy book. It's a it's my attempt at a different book. You can tell me if I'm successful at it or not, but I am trying to do something a little different. Something that I felt like I should write about, and that is Jacob's Apartment, and it is available at bookstores everywhere. And you can find out more information about that on my website. You can probably buy it on pretty much any online bookseller. And the best thing you could do for that book is buy it locally at a comic book shop or at a bookstore. And if you do a bookstore, you can do any bookstore, a big box chain like Barnes & Noble. You can do the small mom and pop bookstore, and just say, hey, there's this book, Jacob's Apartment by Joshua Kemble. Curious to get it. Please pre-order it. So that's one way to help the show and also show your appreciation for these streams. Although you guys have already shown your appreciation just by showing up and hanging out. The other thing I'd like you guys to check out is Two Stories, which is my graphic novel that talks about my journey dealing with depression, caregiving for somebody with panic disorder, growing up as a comic book geek and outcast in a Christian school and kind of witnessing a lot of strange hypocrisy at a young age. And again, very similar to Jacob's Apartment, it does touch on things of the ghosts of our past, like kind of haunting us as adults. And playground politics. There's a lot of like interesting things. The thing about Two Stories that I really like too is it switches styles. It alternates between two different styles. It's all hand lettered, hand inked. By the way, Jacob's Apartment is hand drawn and hand inked, and the lettering is custom lettering, but it's not hand lettered, except for the cover. I think the cover has some hand lettered stuff. But Two Stories, the entire thing is like done very much as like almost a love letter to classic, straight up confessional autobio comics, especially influenced by a lot of the kind of underground guys that were doing stuff for Zap in the 80s, back when comics were really vulnerable and had some guts. So that's Two Stories, and you can get that on Amazon and at online bookstores anywhere. And you can also request that your comic shop order it, although that will be less easily available at stores than Jacob's Apartment, which is distributed by Diamond. So that, I've given you 2 ways that you could actually help the show or help support my indie comics. There's a free way, not a freeway like a freeway in California, but a free way you can support this show. And by the way, I'm also working while I'm doing this because I still want to get further on these crazy thumbnails. I want to get a little further. There is another way that you guys can support the show, and that is hitting subscribe, hit the bell. If you're watching on Twitch, hit follow. Maybe hit the like button. Maybe leave a comment letting me know. I just said us. What are we, Gollum? Like, we're not 2 people. Letting me know that like what you thought of the show. Maybe leave a comment telling me if you guys have experienced that when you're exhausted. Have you had the paranoid exhaustion before? That was a pretty interesting one for me. And yeah, make sure you hit that bell. I know it's cliche to say that at the end of a video, but it does have a function and a purpose. Like, if you hit the bell, you'll get notified when we're about to go live. If you don't, you can kind of miss the streams as they're about to go live. So if you enjoy these streams, do that. And that'll let you know. It'll give you a heads up when we're about to go live. And then it'll be exciting. Try to do the windows. Can we do the windows in like 2 minutes? So I really appreciate you guys showing up. It's kind of fun. Like I've mentioned this before, but I think one of the coolest things about streaming is that I can sit down at my art desk and be like, I wonder if anyone's on. I wonder if anyone's going to come check this out. The fact that you guys do is very cool. I'm excited. I know I went like kind of negative on this stream. Maybe I didn't, because Adam seemed to think it was really positive. So that's cool. But I feel like I went a little negative, and I want to really reassure people that I'm actually overall very optimistic about my books. I'm really thankful actually about the books being out, and I'm really excited about the future and about this current book too, as well as the books that I've made. And I'm very proud of them. Like, I think I've made some really cool books, and proud enough to where, like, I think if people pick them up, they're going to feel good about it. And by the way, saying people pick them up sounds really funny. It sounds like a tongue twister. Anyhow, we're getting kind of silly and sleepy now. It is 2:30. I think I'm going to just do, maybe we'll get like one of these in. Maybe. Just maybe. That can be done. And then I do want to do one last color tone. And then we will call it a night. Oh. Okay. Or so I say. So I am really with this style trying not to render things. So I have a cheat that allows me to kind of render where I can have two different planes that are separated by lines with some values of color, but I want it to be overall mostly flat color because I just don't want to get into crazy amounts of shading. I don't think it'll look well underneath the color to have like that. But I think on this panel in particular, the closer I can get to actually having a little bit of rendering is not going to hurt at all. So we are almost there. The quick way I can kind of adjust this. And then the last step I need to do before I can close out this page is to make whatever I haven't colored a solid magenta, because I don't use magenta anywhere on the page. And that way, when I pick up on working on this tomorrow, I will have no confusion about where I left off, and I can just start right where I left off. So I guess to end this, what do you guys think about trying to make something new? Do you guys think it's a worthy cause? Do you think it is fraught with hardship? Do you think it is completely reasonable? Because I will say, like, man, I'm still pumped to have a book out, and I also think it's a good book. And I'm excited to hear everybody else's thoughts on it. I also want to deselect every single one of these, so I'm going to put continuous on. Boom, deselect it. Did that do it? Does look like it did it. All right, and then I'm going to... Oh, let's get back to this. There might be some sloppy coloring in there that I might have to clean up later. Only time will tell. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Joshua Kemble. If you want to see more of my art, joshuakemble.com. Adam said, I think high quality is more important than innovation for the most part. I agree with that too. I feel like, I know it's weird, but it's like, so like I was saying about Jacobs, if I had just knocked this thing out of the park, but it was something new, I don't know if it would have a lot of value. It's the fact that I kind of, I made the best book I can make. It's like, it's a really high quality book. That's what makes me feel like you should get this. Like, I don't feel bad saying that to people. If I kind of crap this thing out and then it was totally new and the story was kind of cool, but I like copped out on the art, I don't think I'd feel good about it. So I agree with you. And then Adam said, I can elaborate another time. I like that. Yeah, we'll have to do an actual like one-on-one convo. Again, actually, that was really fun yesterday. And then Frank said, you're improving, Josh. That's a throwback to our last one. Yes, you guys. Well, as a handsome artist, I'm going to log off, and I will see you guys on the next live stream, and in which I will probably go way less dark and instead talk about jet ski riding, Victorian Uzi welding action heroes. Have a good night, guys. Have a good morning where you're at.
take care of yourselves too, because I will tell you, if you get too sleep deprived, it is possible to just have total paranoid delusion hit. I did, and it was crazy. And then I slept, and I felt way better, which I'm going to do the same thing before that same thing happens. All right, guys. Have a good night.